A single ESPN segment just set the basketball world on fire. Elle Duncan dared to compare UConn's returning star Paige Bueckers to the WNBA's golden girl Caitlin Clark. Now fans are questioning everything from Duncan's credibility to the endless comparisons. But here's what's got everyone talking. Duncan claims she wouldn't compare them, then mentioned Clark's name 10 times. In the next breath, the backlash is bigger than anyone expected.
That's the reality of the situation. Caitlin Clark's name is brought up because it's going to get clicks. There's a reason why. That's like saying, why not talk about Michael Jordan without talking about LeBron, or talking about LeBron without talking.
The ESPN segment that sparked this firestorm wasn't just your typical sports analysis. Elle Duncan, known for her sharp basketball take, stepped into what became an instant controversy during her primetime segment. She opened with what seemed like a diplomatic approach. While I'm not really interested in pitting those two against each other, but what followed turned the basketball world upside down.
Basketball take. Or if this was a whole Caitlin Clark was Paige Bueckers, or Paige Bueckers Caitlin Clark before Caitlin Clark. Paige Bueckers was the most hyped high school player ever. I mean that before Juju ever. But
within seconds of claiming she wouldn't make comparisons, Duncan mentioned Caitlin Clark's name not once, not twice, but 10 times in rapid succession. The contradiction was so obvious that viewers started clipping the segment before it even finished airing. Sports Twitter, always ready for drama, had a field day with the timestamps showing the quick pivot from no comparisons to all about Caitlin.
Clark on Prime TV is unnecessary and annoying. Like, why is Caitlin's name brought up? Talk with Paige, we want to talk about Paige. Caitlin's name is brought up because it gets clicks.
The segment's timing couldn't have been more controversial. Bueckers had just returned to form at UConn, dropping 28 points against a top-ranked opponent. Instead of focusing on this comeback story, the conversation immediately shifted to Clark comparisons. Duncan's analysis, while well-intentioned, sparked debate about media coverage bias in women's basketball. What made this particularly explosive was a context just weeks earlier. Duncan had faced criticism from misquoting WNBA legend Cheryl Swoops about Clark's impact on the Indiana Fever. That incident had barely cooled down when this new controversy erupted. The basketball community was already on edge, and this felt like deja vu.
I'm not really interested in pitting those two against each other. I'll talk specifically about what I think is really impactful about Paige Bueckers. You're Caitlin for Caitlin, who Caitlin, and the Caitlin is what Caitlin about Caitlin.
So obviously, comparing Caitlin to Paige Bueckers and just mentioning the name Caitlin Clark.
The segment structure itself became a talking point. Critics noted how Duncan would start sentences about Bueckers, but inevitably end them with Clark references. One viral tweet broke down the 2-minute segment, showing that Clark's name was mentioned more than BU's actual achievements. Even casual fans picked up on an imbalance. ESPN production team apparently tried to course correct mid-segment, switching to Bueckers highlight reel. But the damage was done to Kyron at the bottom of the screen still. Read comparing stars despite Duncan's initial disclaimer. This visual contradiction only added fuel to the fire. Media analysts jumped on the moment, pointing out how it exemplified a larger problem in sports coverage. The need to constantly compare athletes, especially in women's sports, often undermines individual achievements. Duncan's segment, perhaps unintentionally, became a perfect case study of this phenomenon. The social media reaction to Duncan's segment was swift and explosive. Within hours, Paige be Paige started trending on Twitter, with fans from both camps expressing their frustration. Basketball Twitter, usually divided on most issues, found rare unity in calling out what they saw as forced narrative building. Verified account of former players jumped into fray. College teammates of both Bueckers and Clark shared personal stories about each player's unique journey. One former UConn player's tweet went viral: "We don't compare every male player to Wanyama. So why do this to women's basketball?" The post garnered over 100,000 likes in just 3 hours. The backlash wasn't just about the comparison itself. It was about timing. Bueckers had just completed her comeback game after battling injuries, dropping an impressive stat line that deserved its own spotlight. Fans argued that overshadowing this moment with Clark comparisons diminished what should have been a celebration of resilience. Reddit's women's basketball community exploded with multiple mega threads. One post titled "The Problem with ESPN's women's basketball coverage" broke down every instance where individual achievements were overshadowed by unnecessary comparisons. Users share clips from previous segments showing a pattern of similar coverage. Even casual fans who rarely engage in basketball discourse, joined the conversation. The number respect their journeys started gaining traction, with many pointing out how male athletes are allowed to build their own legacies without constant comparisons. Has sparked a broader discussion about media coverage in women's sports. A debate spread to TikTok, where college basketball content creators made viral videos analyzing the segment. One creator's breakdown of Duncan's word choice and frequency garnered over 2 million views. The comment sections became forums for fans to share their experiences of why watching both players develop independently. What made this reaction different from typical sports controversies was its staying power. Unlike most social media storms that died down after 24 hours, this discussion continued to evolve. Fans began organizing online campaigns to celebrate both players' individual achievements. Deliberately avoiding comparisons, of fury wasn't just directed at Duncan, it extended to the broader sports media ecosystem. Fans started tracking how often other analysts made similar comparisons, creating spreadsheets and infographics to illustrate the frequency. This data-driven approach gave the criticism more weight than typical fan outrage. Breaking down the historical hype around both players reveals a fascinating contrast in their rise to stardom. Paige Bueckers emerged as a phenomenon during her high school years, consistently ranking as the nation's top prospect. Her highlight reels from Hopkins High School went viral before viral was even common in women's basketball. ESPN featured her games nationally, a rare occurrence for girls' high school basketball. During those early years, Bueckers dominated every level. She made the USA basketball team, earned multiple Player of the Year awards, and commanded attention from major programs across the country. Her commitment to UConn was seen as the perfect match. The most hyped prospect heading to the most storied program. The expectations were unprecedented, with some calling her the next Diana Taurasi before she played a single college game. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark's journey followed a different path. While highly recruited, she didn't carry the same national spotlight. In high school, playing in Iowa, she put up incredible numbers, but didn't receive the same media attention. As Bueckers' decision to stay home and play for Iowa was celebrated locally, but didn't create the same national buzz as UConn. Commitment to narrative shifted dramatically during their college careers. Bueckers lived up to the hype, immediately becoming the first freshman to win National Player of the Year. But injuries interrupted her trajectory, forcing her to watch on the sideline. As Clark's star began to rise, Clark's style of play, deep three-pointers, no-look passes, and scoring explosions created a new kind of basketball celebrity. What's particularly interesting is how their paths diverged. BU's early dominance was more traditional, efficient scoring, precise playmaking, and winning within a system. Clark revolutionized the game with her logo threes and unprecedented scoring numbers. Both approaches worked, but Clark's style proved more attention-grabbing. In the social media era, marketing numbers tell an interesting story. In high school, Bueckers had more Instagram followers and media coverage by their sophomore year. In college, Clark had surpassed her in both metrics. Clark's game started drawing record viewership, while BU's injury absence allowed the spotlight to shift completely there. Stories represent two different models of basketball stardom. Bueckers embodied the traditional path, early recognition, elite program, immediate success. Clark created a new blueprint, staying local, playing with unprecedented freedom, and connecting with fans through a more modern style of play. The Elle Duncan controversy exposed a deeper issue plaguing women's basketball coverage that goes beyond just player comparisons. The media's constant need to create parallels and rivalries is actually hindering the sports. Organic growth networks are so focused on finding the next big storyline that they're missing the authentic narratives unfolding right before their eyes. Let's look at the numbers. During the 2023-24 season, 65% of women's basketball headlines involving top players included a comparison to another player. This isn't just about Clark and Beers. It's become a systemic issue. When Cameron Brink has a dominant game, she's compared to A.A. Wilson. When Angel Reese grabs 20 rebounds, she's measured against Sylvia F.S. records. These constant comparisons diminish each player's unique contributions to the game. The impact on viewer perception is significant. A recent sports media study revealed that fans remember these forced comparisons more than the actual achievements. For instance, more people could recall that Bueckers was compared to Clark than could state BU's actual statistics from her comeback game. This creates a distorted view of players' individual accomplishments and sets unrealistic expectations for emerging talents. The economic implications are equally concerning. Sponsorship deals and marketing opportunities are increasingly tied to these manufactured rivalries. rather than individual merit industry. Insiders report that brands are more likely to invest in players who are part of a compelling comparison narrative than those who stand alone in their excellence. This creates an unfair economic landscape where unique talents might be overlooked simply because they don't fit into convenient comparative narratives. College recruitment is feeling the effects. Two high school players report increased pressure to fit into existing comparisons. One top recruit recently shared how coaches kept asking her to model her game after current stars instead of developing her unique style. This cookie-cutter approach threatens to stifle innovation in the sport and could potentially limit the diversity of playing styles we see at higher levels. Social media engagement patterns reveal another troubling trend. Posts about individual achievements get significantly less traction than those drawing comparisons between players. This creates a cycle where media outlets feel compelled to frame stories through comparative narratives to drive engagement, further perpetuating the problem. The metrics-driven nature of modern media makes it difficult to break this cycle, even when journalists recognize its harmful effects. The international basketball community has noticed two European leagues, which traditionally focus on individual player development, are seeing an influx of American-style comparative coverage. This shift risks globalizing a problematic approach to women's basketball coverage and could impact how the game develops worldwide. Television producers admit off the record that they feel trapped in this cycle, while they recognize the issue. Rating pressures and social media metrics push them toward these comparative narratives. It's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more they compare, the more viewers expect it, and the harder it becomes to break free from this pattern. The most concerning aspect is how these comparisons affect player development. Young athletes are increasingly focused on emulating existing stars rather than developing their own unique abilities. Coaches report that players are more concerned with fitting into predetermined molds than exploring their natural talents. This could lead to a homogenization of playing styles, potentially stunting the sport's evolution. These constant comparisons also create unnecessary pressure on established players. Athletes report feeling frustrated that their achievements are always viewed through the lens of another player's success. This perpetual comparison culture can affect mental health and performance, creating additional challenges for players who are already under intense scrutiny. The fallout from Duncan's comments has sparked a crucial conversation about the future of women's basketball coverage industry. Experts predict this could be a turning point in how media outlets approach player narratives. The overwhelming fan response has forced networks to reconsider their strategy, with some already implementing new guidelines for player comparisons. ESPN insiders reveal that internal discussions are underway about developing more balanced coverage protocols. These include dedicating equal airtime to individual achievements, limiting comparative analysis unless directly relevant to game strategy, and focusing on unique player attributes rather than forced parallels. Other networks are reportedly following suit, recognizing the need for change. Major brands and sponsors are also rethinking their approach. Marketing executives acknowledge that the constant Clark-Boer comparison narrative might actually be limiting their reach. There's growing recognition that celebrating individual journeys could create more authentic connections with fans. Several major sports brands are already developing campaigns that focus on unique player stories rather than the manufactured rivalries. The social media landscape is showing signs of evolution too. Basketball content creators are leading a shift toward more nuanced coverage. The #sign beyond comparisons has gained traction, with fans sharing stories about what makes each player unique. This grassroots movement is influencing how mainstream media approaches women's basketball coverage. College programs are adapting their recruiting pitches as well. Instead of promising to make players the next Caitlin Clark or the next Paige, coaches are emphasizing player development and individual growth. This shift could have long-lasting effects on how young talent is nurtured in women's basketball. The WNBA is taking notice of this conversation. League officials are discussing new media guidelines that would encourage more balanced coverage of their players. Veterans of the game are being consulted to help develop frameworks that celebrate individual achievements while acknowledging the sport's history and evolution. Youth basketball organizations are reporting a positive change in how young players view the sport. Rather than trying to emulate a single-star, young athletes are increasingly comfortable developing their own style. Coaches note that this could lead to more diverse and innovative playing styles in the future. The international impact is particularly noteworthy. Foreign leagues and media outlets are using this moment to develop their own unique approaches to coverage, some European leagues have already implemented policies requiring equal coverage of rising stars without conning comparisons to established players. Looking ahead, sports media experts predict a gradual but significant shift in how women's basketball is covered. The focus is likely to move towards storytelling that emphasizes individual journeys, unique playing styles, and personal achievements. This could create a richer, more diverse basketball narrative that benefits both players and fans. Perhaps most importantly, this controversy has empowered players to speak up about how they want their stories told. Both established stars and rising talents are more openly discussing the impact of constant comparisons on their mental health and performance. Their voices are reshaping how media outlets approach player coverage. The Elle Duncan controversy isn't dying down anytime soon, but you know what matters most: your opinion. Drop a comment below. Are these comparisons fair game, or should we let each player shine on their own? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated on all the latest basketball drama. Let's hit 100,000 subscribers together.